Professor Flint, and welcome to the art of dinosaurs and dead things. And of course, I don't mean the art that dinosaurs might have drawn or sculptures dinosaurs might have created. What I'm talking about is you, especially if you are in reception to year 8, I'm talking about you creating artwork that tells the story of dinosaurs, but also other prehistoric animals. Paleo art, the story of paleo art is fascinating, and just as our understanding of paleontology and our understanding of particular fossils has changed over years, so we have changed what we think particular animals might have looked like. And there is nothing, of course, more iconic than T-Rex, so let's have a look at that. So these are a couple of early illustrations of T-Rex, and have a look at them. And you can see that they look very, very lizard-like, very reptile-like, as we understand reptiles to be, like, you know, snakes and lizards and turtles and things. They very much look like that. And we can also see that they've got that upright stance, an animal with big back legs, short front arms, and a long tail. And this particular stance was taken because early scientists that were looking at this, and early artists, because that's the thing with paleo art, it's artists and scientists working together in collaboration. But what you understand, an animal with big legs, back legs, a tail and short arms, what kind of living animal, because we need to look at living animals, what kind of living animal is an example of that? And it's a kangaroo. And a kangaroo often spends a lot of time standing upright. But let's fast forward from, T-Rex was discovered, I think, in 1907 or thereabouts. But let's fast forward. If you hadn't a chance to watch Prehistoric Planet, the new series, you'll know what you're looking at. If you haven't had a chance to see it, and you do get a chance, you've got somebody that's got a friend that subscribes to the network that it's on, do that. If you subscribe to it, then make sure you watch it. This, of course, is also a T-Rex. Now let's just go back again. That is what we thought T-Rex was like. This is what we think is the modern incarnation of T-Rex. So there's quite a difference. One of the differences, of course, is have a look at this, then back to this. This one is a lot more chunky. It's a lot more muscular, isn't it? You can see that. You can see that in this animal. But the other thing, of course, let's go back again, have a look at it, and have a look at this, is that it's this. The difference in standing position. So this is the old one. This is the current iteration of what we think. And this is because, and this is changed because our understanding of the science has changed. Our understanding through using computer modelling, through the discovery of more fossil evidence, has changed what we thought was an animal that walked around like this, to an animal that walks like this. And the cool thing with an animal like this is that it balances better as it's walking. Its tail and its head are nicely balanced. The legs actually fit into the hip sockets, and its tail doesn't snap off, which is what the computer models told us would happen with this. The other really interesting thing, of course, is that we find footprints of tyrannosaurs all over the place, but we do not find the tail marks scraping along the ground, which we do with kangaroos, right? Modern day kangaroos have their tails scraping along the ground, but we don't find that with tyrannosaurs and other raptors. So we find their feet, but there's no tail mark. Again, confirming that idea. So the Mariani Art Prize, what's really important, right? Or if you're creating paleo art for the Mariani Art Prize or something else, what matters is what are you looking for? What are you trying to create? Now, I'm one of the judges for this competition, and I'll talk a little bit later about what I'm looking for. But in fact, I'll tell you now, I'm looking for a story, right? I'm looking for not just a picture of the animal. I'm looking for a story. But one of the other judges, paleo artist Katrina Kenny, amazing paleo artist. We'll see some of her work soon. What is she looking for? You're a judge in again in this year's Mary Anning Art Prize, where we're asking people to create artwork from their local area. As a judge, what will you be looking for in entries?
I think, despite my area of interest being in the older animals, the arthropods, the Cambrian, the Ediacaran, and we've had some fantastic entries previously for those particular eras. I'm happy to see anything that shows a interest from the artist in the environment, interpreting the animal maybe in an unexpected way, rather than just a copy from something they've seen in a book. And if it's not quite scientifically correct, but it has a spirit and a life about it, then I'm all for it.
This is an artwork by Katrina, and I'll talk about it in a moment. Just let's think about, though, what Katrina was talking about. And so she's talking about being brave in what you're creating. She's talking about thinking of not just the normal kind of, I'll just draw the head of a prehistoric animal, or I'll just draw the animal just kind of sitting on a thing and whatever. It's like, and this is what we see in this particular work here. What I love about this work, and what's really important when you're looking at an artwork or a photograph, is you don't just look at it, you look into it. What do you see when you look into this painting? And when you look into this painting, you see this is an early Cambrian 515 million years ago landscape, seascape, and based on fossils found in Kangaroo Island in South Australia. And you see a whole bunch of trilobites on the ocean floor. You see one trilobite in the beginning, like at the front. And so they're just kind of doing trilobite things. And what you also see then on one side, at the back, is these other animals just floating around doing their thing. But at the back, you see Anomalocaris. And Anomalocaris is thought to be an apex predator from the time. And so the suggestion, and whether it is what happens next or doesn't, the suggestion in this work is like, this Anomalocaris is lurking and ready to pounce on these trilobites. So it's a fascinating work of art. And it's not just about when you look at a work of art, you don't just look into it, but you imagine what might happen next. If there was a painting that was done 30 seconds later, where is Anomalocaris? What is it doing? What are the trilobites doing in response to that? So this is what good art does. It gets us to think, but it's that thing of stories. Now let's go back in time quite a bit. We've been talking about, touched on Mary Anning because the prize is named after my science hero, paleo pioneer Mary Anning. And this particular artwork by Henry de la Beche was, it's the first time really we see an environment recreated by an artist. Now, it seems a little bit full to me. There seems to be a lot of animals all squished in together in the one place, in the water and in the sky and on the land. But all of these things are things that Mary discovered, and fossils that Mary discovered. And so what Henry did, and they knew each other and they spoke to each other, what he's done, he's taken her discoveries and put them into a scene. So he's not just drawn Dimorphodon, the pterosaur flying through the sky. He's not just drawn Dimorphodon, kind of just there on its own. He's drawn Dimorphodon diving, one of them looking up at the other one. There's a couple of other, if you look into the picture, there's a few other Dimorphodons about, but he's also drawn these other, there's a mosasaur who's got its jaws around the neck of a plesiosaur. There are all kinds of other interactions happening in this work of art. So these are the kinds of things, if you're going to create a work of art, of paleo art, the cool things to look for are the stories in the stuff, are the things that are going on. And this is fascinating, okay? So this is also from the 1800s. And if you look at the picture on the that's inside the building. So these are the Crystal Palace dinosaurs that were created and that still exist. You can go to London, Crystal Palace, and you can visit this location where these particular things are. And look at the one in the middle, and you can see that little horn on its nose. There's a little man there. Well, he's not a little man. He's probably a full-size man. But there's a man there, and he's helping build the thing. But look at that little thing on the nose, the little horn on the nose of that particular dinosaur. And it turns out that it was thought that that was a horn on the nose of Iguanodon, but it turns out that's actually Iguanodon's thumb. It also turns out, and if you look it up, that's some homework, look up what Iguanodon looks like now in terms of what we understand it to be. And it's not that. It's not a thing that was kind of down on all fours like that in the way that that is. But then have a look at the other two pictures, the other two illustrations by the same artist. And at the top you see the plesiosaur with the bent neck. We now know that that's probably very unlikely. And you see a mosasaur with water gushing out of its nostrils. Why? Why did the artist do that? The artist did that because I think these animals kind of would have looked a little bit, if you didn't know really, it's like, oh, this giant sea creature that lives in the sea. What other giant sea creatures live in the sea? Whales. What do whales do? They have a single nostril on the top of their head. We call it a blowhole. They squirt water out of it. So that's what the artist has done there. That bottom picture makes me laugh every time I see it, because what you see, those plesiosaurs and that, I'm going to say it's probably supposed to be an Allosaurus because T-Rex had not yet been discovered. They all seem to be smiling, and I don't know what they're smiling at. Finally, Charles R. Knight, those two dinosaurs attacking each other. Charles R. Knight is a famous paleo artist from the olden days, when Granny Flint was around. When Granny Flint was a baby. But these are some others. And again, you can see very reptile nature of these particular things. Okay, so far we've seen some really cool old paleo art, some vintage paleo art, and given us a sense of the change of what we thought T-Rex looked like in the past to what it looks like now. We've seen this. We've heard from Katrina. We've seen the artwork from Henry Delbecq of the things that Mary Anning had discovered. So what I want to do now, here's a bit of a quiz for you, something to think about. What animal is this? If you don't know what it is, can you work it out just by looking at the skeleton? Because this is what a paleontologist does. Our job is to look at this and to work out what the animal looked like when it was alive, to work out what the animal did while it was alive, to work out where it lived, to work out the trees and the landscape in which it lived. Okay, it's got 4 legs, it's got ribs, it's got a skull, it's got a backbone, there's a little tiny tail there. What animal is it? It's this. It's a bear. How would you have known, if you didn't know what it was, that it was covered in fur? Great question. And these are the things that we need to look at. What's the evidence that might tell us about its covering? Well, there isn't any in that, in just the skeleton. So yes. And notice too that this bear is in a place surrounded by grass. How would we know that from this? We don't. There are other ways of finding that out, or we have to, as Katrina talked about, we have to be brave in our assertions as to what might be possible. Okay, here is a second skeleton. Now look at this one. Now you'll notice there are some similarities with this. 4 legs. 4 legs. Skull. The ribs. Have a look. The ribs are a little bit different, aren't they? The ones on the bear seem to kind of finish earlier. These ones seem to go a little bit longer and kind of narrow off. So, feet similar, but yeah. So you'd think from looking at it, this is probably some kind of mammal, perhaps. And you'd be right. It's this. It's a pig. It's a pig. And have a look at that. The skulls are always interesting. The skulls are interesting to see what the meat is. Because, you know, the soft anatomy of extinct creatures doesn't preserve particularly well, which is why the shapes and colours of modern animals can help provide clues. So let's go back to that pig again. And I want you to have a look at this, right? I want you to have a look. So this is the pig skeleton, and we see in the black the shadow of the outline, the shadow outline of the pig. You can see around where the skull is and the head. You can see how the belly fills out. How would you know that? Part of our job as paleontologists is to look at pigs and horses and lizards and birds, and all of these existing animals give us clues for when we look at skeletons from the past as to what they might have looked like. So when you're building an animal, when you're taking a skeleton, and you know, it's that question: how well does a skeleton of a living animal record its shape? Well, with a pig, that's the shape. And that's the animal. Okay, something very important.
We like lifting up, we go and away, we lift up high and higher, fluttering on as we fly. Let's walk along the seaside,
find stories in the sand.
let's walk along the seaside.
The ocean meets the land.
So won't you come sailing with me, far, far away on an ancient sea.
I am a paleontologist. In the rocks and dirt I play. I am a paleontologist. Thunderbolts, very harsh vertebrates, curious things, all that and more. My best friend, my dog Trey.
So, couple of things I want to show you. That book that Katrina, when I was chatting with Katrina, that's this book here. This is one of my early dinosaur books. And have a look at this. Long-necked dinosaur in the water. And it says here, really fascinating question, right? And I'll read a bit to you. Also, when the gentle plant eaters were in the water, they were safe from their fierce two-legged meat-eating cousins. So they thought that was a safety thing. But the plant-eating dinosaurs had to drop down to a four-legged position. In the first place, it was easier to reach the plants that way. In the second place, they were getting too heavy to support their weight on 2 legs. As a matter of fact, it wasn't always easy to carry all those pounds around on 4 legs. So some of the largest plant-eaters spent a lot of time in the water. A lot of time in the water. Now, we now know, and here's a picture here. We now know, you can see his little head sticking just out there. We know that if your lungs are down here, right? If your lungs are down here, the water pressure, and your head is up here, you're not going to be able to breathe. So that's not a thing. We know that their bones were a lot lighter than we thought they were. So those early illustrations are fascinating, and they provide a great example of what we used to think, but what the science tells us now is the actual case. Okay, so let's have a look. I often talk about how much paleontologists like teeth and skulls. And this is a skull of one of my favorite animals in the entire universe of universes. What did this animal look like when it was alive? And what's really interesting, you can have a look at the teeth. It's got teeth at the front, and you can look at a few different angles of this skull. It's got teeth at the front that look like the teeth of a beaver. But those teeth at the side, those teeth that it's like a long tooth at the bottom jaw, behind the sharp pointy ones. The long tooth. Look at those side illustrations. You've got a tooth there and a tooth at the top, and same on the other side. When they close together, those teeth are like they're like blades, sharp blades. And we found other parts of the skeleton of this animal in places like Narracot in South Australia, and this is what it is. This is Thylacoleo, and a giant scissor-tooth possum, a giant tree-climbing, meat-eating scissor-toothed wombat. That's the kind of things that it's related to, and this is what it looked like. What's really interesting here, this particular work by Peter Murray is Wakaleo, which is a cousin of Thylacoleo. Hello. You can see what he's done here in creating that final bit. There's an intermediate step. So takes the bones, adds on the muscle. And that's what we've done with T-Rex. So you go back to that earlier T-Rex that we looked at. So that's what they've done with the T-Rex. But with T-Rex, we've realized it's much more bulkier. So you add on the muscle, and then on top of the muscle, you add on, and with Wakaleo, it's like, it's a mammal. It's going to have fur. The other really cool thing, of course, is that with Thylacoleo, with Thylacoleo, we have rock art, and the rock art tends to suggest kind of patterns and things and stuff. Okay, what do we got here? Well, this is a fascinating skull indeed. This is a skull of an animal from Australia, and if you saw the animal, if I asked you, if you didn't know what this was, now some people might know what this is, if you didn't know what it is, and I said, could you draw what you think this looks like when you put on the muscle and the feathers or fur or whatever it is? Well, I can tell you it's fur, but what I can also tell you is that this is a koala. And there is no indication on this skull, if all you have is the skull, there is no indication on this skull that it looks like a cute, fluffy teddy. So, these are some of the really cool things when it comes to paleo art. Okay, we've been talking about the Mary Anning Art Prize, and what I want to do now is show you Brian Chu is one of the other judges. And here's a piece of work by Brian. And Brian, this is Yiki, and it's a really fascinating, recently discovered dinosaur. I say recently discovered, but last 10, 15 years or so. And it's a flying dinosaur, but it's not a feather-winged dinosaur like Microraptor, which glides, or Archaeopteryx. It's got wings like a bat. And Brian, I've spoken with him about this particular work, and he talks about it as being a work of art that you've got this one dinosaur at the front, standing on that branch. It's getting ready. It's late evening, or sorry, early evening, and the sun is setting or getting ready to set. And so the one at the front is getting ready to go off and get some food, and the one at the back is already out there collecting food. The other work of art from Brian is this one here, and this is Uteranus. Well, it's a few of them, and a few other creatures as well, but Uteranus is a feathered tyrannosaur, and this particular work of art was the work of art that was used when this discovery was presented to the world. Uteranus is a feathered dinosaur as big as, yes, an Allosaurus. And what does that tell us? Well, a woolly mammoth is covered in hair. But big animals generally aren't covered with stuff. elephants, sauropods. You know, they're not covered with fur, feathers, or whatever because they're able to retain their heat even when it's cold. So, what does it tell us that a great big animal is covered in feathers or fur? A woolly mammoth, Yutyrannus. It tells us, and you can see that in the illustration, you can see that it is cold. Don't forget, of course, we're talking about the Mary Anning Art Prize. Keep an eye on our Facebook page. We'll share it a bit more. Okay, I want to show you this. This is from my friend from Flinders University, Jacob. And so Jacob began this work of art, and he did this, and you'll see at the end of it how amazing it is. But this is how he started this particular work of art. And it's a pencil drawing. And you can see, look at the outline. And once you've watched this video the first time, go back and look at this again and see what he's put in there. And then compare it with a later, slightly later stage. Okay, so there's this. And then there's this. So there's more of those feathers. There's more detail on it. And then here we have the final version. I mean, how cool, how remarkable, how extraordinary is that from Jacob? Illustrated with a pencil this very year. So remarkable artwork from some remarkable people that we've been able to show you. And the cool thing about art is that, what's his name? Monet. Monet once said, people talk about my art as if they understand it, as if it is necessary to understand, when all it is necessary is to love. So you don't need to overthink when you're creating a story with your artwork. But it's that thing. What's the story that you want to tell? Okay, so this is from Ashton McGarry, who entered the Mary Anning Art Prize a couple of years ago, and this was one of the winning entries, and it's a fantastic example of an Ediacaran seascape, the Ediacara biota. So what I love about this is that it's not just the things that were made out of, I think it's plasticine, but the photo, the way the photo is taken and the light kind of shines on. This is a really cool thing because we don't get you to send in your artworks to us. What we do get you to do is send you one photo, and you need to think about that when you're telling your story. You can't take, if you've got a sculpture, we want to see it just from one particular angle, and this shows you that you can do that. As does this from Ethan Jackson. This is, we showed Thylacoleo before. This is a life-size model made out of paper mache of Thylacoleo, and look at that at the back. That is a Diprotodon with part of its leg missing. Why is its leg missing? Those giant scissor teeth. There are so many gaps and so many places and spaces in which you can play when creating paleo art that our favourite things are things like those two that you saw. That one, the Ediacara biota by Ashton, like just remarkably, like the colours. We don't know what colours those animals were. Or when I say animals, the Ediacara biota is animal, plant, somewhere in between. But we don't know what colours they were. We may never know what colours they were. But it is perfectly reasonable and fascinating and cool that they were created in that colour. Reconstructing animals from the past and reconstructing scenes and stories of animals in the past is a mixture of art and science. Now, that's the thing I've been doing for a very long time through music, but you get to do this through creating through sculptures, paintings, whatever art form suits you is what is fine. Just a reminder, Mary Anning Art Prize, you have been amazing. Thank you so much, and cheerio.